This is the Criterion Creeps podcast, and tonight we're talking about Coup de Torchon from 1981, directed by Bertrand Tavernier. Tavernier?
Come on.
Come on, why can't you have a good
Come
last
on.
name like Smith?
Will
Bertrand
Smith?
Smith.
Smith?
Yeah.
Hmm? Huh?
And no tagline for this movie. It's not that type of picture. And
Mm-hmm.
synopsis here from the Letterboxd. In 1938, in the French West Africa, Lucien Courgier is a weak and corrupted policeman despised by the local bad boys. His wife
Nice.
is openly cheating on him, and he hasn't got any self-respect anymore. But when comes the occasion, his revenge will be terrible. Like this
Who wrote that?
synopsis, by the local bad boys.
It sounds like I wrote that.
You wish. Anyway,
Yeah.
so I had never seen this movie before.
Really?
No. I had. God, I think at some point I was looking at a list of like secret, like highly rated movies you've never seen,
Mm-hmm.
like great neo noirs, that sort of thing. That's probably where I'd first ever heard of this, and it's like it jumps out because it's like, oh, this like French title, 1981. It has this like pretty unassuming movie poster that you're just like, what's this about? Is this like a
Mm-hmm.
romance? And you read the description, and it just sounds kind of like vague, and it's like not really specific. No one talks about this movie too much.
Mm-hmm.
This movie's out of print. It's one of those Studio Canal numbers, so Criterion doesn't have the rights to it anymore. So
Mm-hmm.
it's just sort of a movie that I guess gets by on this kind of reputation. It seems like actually in general, like French films from the 80s really kind of just get forgotten about. I think about like
Yeah.
Vagabond is another one of those movies that like
Mm-hmm.
no one talks about them. They just kind of like they got made and they're not English. So and there's other like countries that were making movies that people are far more likely to talk about. It seems like
Mm-hmm.
French 80s stuff just it's no 60s French stuff.
Yeah, everyone's so hot on that 400 blows they can't think of anything else.
That's right. So anyway, kind of went into this blind, not knowing what to expect.
Mm-hmm.
RJ, do you know what the title of this movie translates to in English?
No, and I looked it up and I couldn't find it because I don't know how a computer works. So I was gonna ask you.
Clean slate.
Mm, I don't know. I don't know about that. I think they could have did something better.
Maybe. Okay.
Yeah.
So this is a French film. It is an adaptation of the American novel by Jim Thompson that I talked about in the preamble part. That he wrote the classic book, The Killer Inside Me. This is a novel called Population 1280, which set during a West Texas oil boom.
Ooh.
So it's transplanted here to colonial Africa. So the one thing I thought I would bring this up because when I started watching this movie, I didn't know it was based on a Jim Thompson novel, and while watching it, I was thinking about the character, the sheriff figure in this movie, he being the exact opposite of the character in The Killer Inside Me, which it was just a really weird thing though about this like sheriff who just has like unchecked power who just starts killing people. And so when I saw that, I'm like, oh, really? So I guess Jim Thompson went back to this well and kind of like did two versions of the same idea with two different types of characters. Anyway, so yeah, this movie is set in French West Africa, now known as Senegal, in 1938, so just before World War II starting to cook up. And I was thinking at this point, we haven't had that many depictions of Africa in the Criterion Collection.
No, none yet.
Yeah, up to this point, this is the debut.
I was thinking of Walkabout, but I was like, that's Australia.
Yeah, see, we've had all other necks of the woods. We've had like
Yeah.
unnamed South American country in Wages of Fear. But yeah, no Africa. The whole of Africa, I don't think has been depicted yet. Anyway, so I just thought I would mention that. We'll get to that Algiers battle for it. Anyway, so my general thought on this movie. It's a weird movie, right?
You know what's funny, Jarrett?
What?
That's exactly what I was gonna say.
This is like so the movie starts out with this super dramatic music, like really laying it on thick. and we get like just this man in the middle of like, I don't know,
The
Africa,
bush.
in the bush, and he's just like desperate and stubbly, and he's got a gun, and
He's staring at
he's
kids.
staring at these like starving, filthy children. They're just like bloated and just like milling around, doing whatever. We get an
Hmm.
eclipse, and then like
Yeah.
while the eclipse is happening, he decides to like start a fire for them, and the score just keeps going, and it starts getting a little jazzy, and
Hmm.
it's like really like, what in the world is this about? And then that's the end. That's the scene. And then we have him
Credits.
we have him coming back to town, and then we get some hot outhouse action.
Hmm.
And you're just like, what is this? Where is this all going? And then the movie starts like laying out, I guess, its premise, but like in the most like untypical way. Like this movie is not like other movies. The way like
Hmm.
I kept imagining like it's like deflating everything that you would expect. The way that it's shot,
Yeah.
it just introduces characters in ways that like if this movie was American made like in the last 10 years, it would be so predictable and kind of rote.
Yeah.
This movie doesn't feel predictable in a weird way. But at the same time, I think that's kind of a detriment to it as far as like my ability to enjoy it.
Hmm.
Um, so yeah, the story is our boy here, Lucien. He's the sheriff of this town. He's
Hmm.
the top law dog, and he literally is a cuck. um,
Yep.
his wife is having an affair with her quote unquote brother,
Hmm.
who he's just been identified. She's just been saying, yeah, this is my brother, he lives with us now, and oh, I better
Hmm.
go take care of him. And they're like making out and having sex, and he can't have sex with his wife anymore because she has no interest in him. But like the guy doesn't realize that it's like what's going on, or he just doesn't, he's thick, or like
Doesn't. Yeah.
it's kind of weird, but it's like whatever.
Did you
um
recognize that actress, Criterion Creeps alum that we killed a couple weeks ago?
Isabel Hooper.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Anyways,
Anyways, so she here, no Kirk Douglas this time though, not yet.
not
Not
yet.
He's been spared another week.
Uh-huh.
But so Lucien seems to be pretty content eating duck like an animal. Wolf in the
I Can I tell you something?
what?
When I was in China, there was this guy, local realtor. I'm not going to tell you who, but he works for a certain real estate company in Lethbridge. If you want to know, email in. I saw him one time eat two ducks like that. We were served duck soup, and they had the whole duck carcass in the soup, and everyone ate the soup. And then when the soup was gone, he pulled the duck out and just ate it over top of his plate, just taking bites off of the carcass,
Mm-hmm.
clean. He ate two of them bad boys.
So
So that's real life, man.
so
I've seen that happen.
you have flashbacks to that moment.
I think about it every time I see someone eating duck. I always think about it.
Hmm.
So it's true to life, dude.
Right.
Yeah. Anyways, keep going.
So yeah. Anyway, this movie is kind of punctuated with a lot of floaty Steadicam camera work.
Yeah.
And like, and we have our boy just like kind of wandering around, kind of being told to go fuck himself, and no one respects this guy. And then we have him a bit where he consoles a domestic abuse victim with a hand to the inner thigh.
Hmm.
So that's like kind of disarming.
Hmm.
And then he goes to the next town over, has a meeting with I guess like another like a superior who kind of says, you gotta get your respect back, dude. You're a sad bastard here.
Uh-huh.
You're not doing yourself any favors. Like no one gives a crap about you. And then he's like, okay, and then he proceeds to just start murdering people.
Yep.
Yeah, so it escalates real quick.
Hmm.
This movie took me a really long time to get through, and it's only 99 minutes long.
Hmm.
Around 46-minute mark, I had to stop because I had to go do a dinner thing, and so I didn't get back to it till like the next day, and I continued on.
Reagan.
But that last like 45 minutes, I was just like, just not really interested in what this movie's laying down. It feels like a Coen Brothers movie, but it's like it's missing the elements that I really like in a Coen Brothers movie, like Blood Simple,
Hmm.
Future Creep. I think that movie is like amazing. But I mean, it's totally different approaches to filmmaking and very different a way of making movies. So I mean,
Right.
I think this movie is like fairly well made and
Hmm.
well acted, and I just didn't I don't care for how the movie was told, I guess, is
Mm-hmm.
more my story at the end of the day. But I'll kind of leave it at that because I'm sure we can talk about the second half of the movie more once you kind of give me your thoughts of your experience watching this odd little movie.
Yeah, so I kind of had a similar response to this movie as you did. Like, the best way to put it is weird, because you have that opening and you're like, all right, whatever, we'll see where this goes. And then you see the way this guy kind of interacts with people, and you're like, okay, all right, like you kind of see what they're doing. You're like, I see they're setting the stage here. This guy gets shit on by everybody. He's a loser, and then then he starts doing his own thing, and you're kind of like, all right. But it's got this weird feel to it where you never really, you don't like root for this guy in any way. And I don't think you're supposed to.
Right.
But then at the same time, it's like none of the other characters are really likable either, except for they introduced a
the
teacher character.
Yeah.
Yeah. And you're like, okay, well, there's like one fucking like beam. What are those lightning rod things? Not a light. Anyways.
A lightning rod?
And never mind. I was looking for something else to say. But she's like the one kind of thing that sticks out, and you're like, all right, I kind of
A ray of sunshine?
I don't know, whatever. But so this movie, like, it has this weird back and forth where there are some scenes that I actually think are really good.
Mm-hmm.
And like, there's a scene where a guy gets wheelbarrowed out of a whorehouse, and I thought that was really funny. I was like, that's awesome. I'd love to see something like that in my real life.
Mm-hmm.
And then there's really fun dialogue. Like one person, I wrote this one down. The wife calls the guy. She says, "ass lickers like you,"
Oh, yeah.
and I thought that was really funny.
Mm-hmm.
So there's like scenes that are really well done, and like you said, really acted. Like the dialogue is good. It's well shot. It's well filmed, but it doesn't really stick with you because there's also all these weird shots, like you said, like. It was almost like a first person, like the bobbly camera stuff, where it's just kind of like a freehand camera, just kind of roving around.
Yeah, there's like times where
There's
the
a few of
camera
those.
reminds me of Evil Dead.
Yeah, there's a few of those, and then I think like the heart of this movie kind of comes out of nowhere. Also, like you see how shitty people are to him, and you see how shitty people are in general, and you're like, okay, people suck in this world. Like. People suck. And then you're like, okay, well, this guy's just kind of like you said, he's kind of like a blockhead. He's got this guy living in his house, banging his wife. And you're like, all right, well, does he just not have the balls or is he dumb? And then just by basically being given a demonstration, it's like, stand up for yourself. He's like, okay, I'm going to go start murdering people. I feel like
show those pimps.
Yeah,
because I never thought about killing people until I was given like this sort of like vague advice about standing up for myself, and I'm gonna I'm gonna go escalate this to like the most dramatic possible way of like shooting two dudes and then dumping them in the river.
Yeah, and I feel like it really comes out of nowhere because it's mean, and it's kind of like what this guy does is mean and cruel, but he's also like really cunning all of a sudden, and it's like, where did this come from? Like he has this elaborate plan to get back at the guy who taught him the lesson, like his superior officer. Mm-hmm. And it's like a good plan, and you're like, all right, so is this guy actually really smart? And you see him like set up all this like really elaborate fucking schemes to get back at the people who like did him wrong, or as they say in this movie, quote, do you dirty. There's a guy who's like, don't let him do you dirty. So he's getting back at all these people, and you're like, okay, so is he like actually really smart? He just never had the balls, and all it took was one person to be like, hey, go stand up for yourself. So I feel like that's kind of weird, and I feel like the way they present it is in a way that it loses you a little bit. Like it lost me because I was like, I don't really know why I care about this guy. It's like he's not really, I'm not rooting for him. Like, okay, all of a sudden he's really smart and like has these elaborate plans, but whatever, who cares? And so I didn't really like it at those parts, but it's kind of like you said, it's kind of weird because later on in the movie I was almost like, all right, I'm actually kind of interested to see what he has planned for these people.
Yeah.
But even that goes out on like a whiff, and you're just kind of like, oh, okay. Like it did for me, at least. I was kind of just like, all right, it seemed like there was going to be more to it than that, but whatever. There's also really weird things in this movie, like the steampunk blind guy who's like spouting out like weird abstract wisdom on the train. He's
Hmm.
just like walking around, and you're like, is this a David Lynch character? Like, what's going on here?
Yeah.
There's that. You get one of the weirdest chicken coops I've ever seen, where it's just free range eggs just all over the place. I don't know what that has to do with anything. You have guys falling in shit, which should be hilarious, and it kind of is, but at the same time, I was like, I like my dump jokes a little bit more well crafted than this, and I don't know. It's weird. Like we're saying it too much, and it's a nice word to use to say that to describe what's going on. But I feel like this whole movie was different analogies and metaphors for saying that the squeaky wheel gets the grease. Like every interaction that this guy has, it's like different ways of doing that. It's like, oh, these guys are shitty, they'll get their comeuppance, and it's like, oh, that guy does this, he'll get his comeuppance, and it's like, I don't know, man. That's kind of how I saw it playing out. I was like, this is weird.
Yeah, no, it like, and then there's like the tonal shifts and like the
Yeah.
there's
Oh,
like
that's a big.
because like a big part of it is like the first half of this movie is like a comedy, like when
Yeah.
the one superior is like telling him about like what happens if a man like kicks you in the ass out through a door, everyone laughs at you, and like you don't even respond and like a real person would, you
Yeah.
should get mad, and like that there's like, it's just like, no, this feels like a French comedy.
Yep.
And like it's got that feeling of it where I'm like, this isn't funny, because I guess I have like a very particular sense of humor that's like
It's not
not,
funny.
it's where it's like, I'm like, I some people would find this funny, like the Q-tip crowd that goes to like best picture
Sure.
movies, they'd probably be like, ho, 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 ho. They think this movie was very funny, and then there'd be the dark turn where suddenly he's like, oh, he just shotgun blasted that guy in the stomach,
Hmm.
um and like killed those people, and people might find that funny too, like a black comedy maybe, but I don't feel like that's kind of where it's going.
No, you're right. Like it is tonally all over the place. Like there's these elements of like slapstick comedy, like Peep and Tom's guys falling through shitters, and then it goes really dark. And that's what I was saying too. Like it's kind of out of nowhere. You're like, what? Like they build the world where there's like bad people. There's a guy beating up his wife in the alley, but then it cuts to like a goofy scene with a dog, and the guy's like, "Oh, that's a weird dog," and you're just like, you're like, I don't know, man. It's got a it doesn't have a good balance. I don't know.
Well, I don't know if it's the right balance. It's just disarming. Like it's
Yeah.
so, I don't know. I don't know how I feel about the movie at all. Like it's
Yeah.
like in my mind, like where I'm like, I wouldn't recommend people watch it, and I would. It's just like it'll be a movie I never think about probably ever again.
Ever.
Like it's just like, 'cause
Ever.
it's not interesting in the right way either.
Yeah.
Like even the end, because like the end, so like the end of the movie, jumping ahead, I guess, is
Yeah.
like it comes full circle. He's basically set up so like everybody's taken care of, but things have also gone awry, and he doesn't really know what is going to come next. And he's like, at this point, going to keep killing people, it's suggested, or to
Mhm.
stop himself from killing these, like, because he goes back to see the children at the beginning of the movie, and he's kind of like looking at them with his gun, but he's also off by himself with a gun,
Yep.
and he's like, well, he could just end his life. But you're like,
Mhm.
where does this come from? Like, it doesn't feel like the it's earned, I guess, or like it's so there. I don't
Yeah.
know. I mean, like, I think probably the best staged scene for me, like the bit I really like, is when he's basically played out the whole thing of like his lover,
Mhm.
the beaten wife, of her like going up to her bedroom, finding the gun that he's left
Mhm.
there, and killing his wife in the bowl. Like
Yeah.
that's all well done, and like it's like, but and then
I just thought of another really weird scene.
okay,
Sorry, were
yeah.
you?
No,
Yeah.
I was saying
Did I
that,
cut you off?
yes, you completely did.
Okay, keep going.
Yeah,
Keep going.
he kept like, I have something to say about that, and then you don't.
Yeah.
Anyway, so anyway, I thought that scene was really like, I think that was like, okay, this is like starting to feel like something I'm interested in.
Yeah.
And then you get the man kind of like stumbling around, also gut shot, and then he just collapses and dies. And he's kind of like, I feel kind of bad about this, I guess. Oh, it was just like, okay. And then there's the stuff with the other scene. I think is kind of a nice scene, very European international filmmaking from the 80s of like them watching the movie, like they're watching a film projection. With a bunch of people. I'm like, oh yeah, I've seen that scene like in lots of movies, Cinema Paradiso. People are really obsessed with this idea of like the shared experience of watching movies together and stuff like that. But then it's kind of like, yeah, but that's like, I've seen that. And I don't know. Sorry. Now you can cut me off and continue with that thought.
No.
Okay.
No, I was gonna. You were talking about what I remembered. It's that other weird scene where the guy who gets shot like 2 days earlier is just stumbling around and is like brought back to the house. And
Well, he wasn't stumbling around. He was like,
well, yeah, like he gets brought back.
He was propped up on the door.
Yeah, but like that's the way it like. The way it gets played off is that he is like stumbling around, and you're like, what? You're like, where's this coming from?
That was that Steadicam shot that made me think of Evil Dead.
Yeah, that one, and then the other one too, where did you just? I'm having a weird moment. Did you just talk about this where he buggies out there with the wife to show her the body, and then that's another Steadicam one? Okay, that's another one where the camera comes out of the woods and he like buggies up on his little horse and is like to the lady. He's like, "There's the husband of yours I just killed," and she's like, "Good, take that, sucker."
Yes.
And you're like, okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah, there's the bit where after he's gut shot the dude, and he's just like putting the boots into him, and then later on he's putting more boots into his brother-in-law for peeping in the window, which is all done very cash. This is like, oh, that's what happens. Guys are perverts with their ladders, crawling up and looking at you showering.
Uh-huh.
Yeah. Oh,
it's bizarre.
And then there's the N-bombs in racism.
Yeah, there's a few about whether there are souls or not, whether they have souls or not, whether they're people.
Yeah.
You feel like he stands up for them a little bit, but it's not.
Well, it's
like kind of
right. So I mean, it's like period details, I suppose, but being done in a movie that's like from 1981, so it's trying to like grit it up, I guess, and get more like, hey, we can say this because it's a period piece. Like it's always kind of like a weird line, and I guess it's like makes it so it's like even making these characters even more deplorable, which is like, okay, maybe you need to like have some likable characters or like make these characters a little bit more charming, rather than kind of just like, oh, these people are just actively bad people that like you can't really hang a movie on.
Not really. And it's like you're saying, the teacher's the only really likable one, and even then you're just kind of like, all right, because she's not in it very much, and you're just like,
she disappears for a while, because there's like the introduction of her like on the train getting there, and then they share a cart, they don't have to talk, and then they like transfer or whatever, and then they have like a bit more of a conversation as he tries to like be like, because he's kind of a horn dog. He likes those ladies, even though it's like this guy who's supposed to be kind of like a Walter Mitty sort, like who's like a real like yes dear. He's like macking on these ladies, and it's like he's just like bad at everything. And I don't know. I feel like there's a better version of this movie to be made.
I agree.
Even though it's like, yeah, I mean, this movie looks good and whatnot, but. Yeah, it's like nothing. I don't think I'm going to hold on to. And I mean, I've seen there's some people who like, because people love to say masterpiece and I love this movie. What a great thing. Blah blah blah. But I'm like, I don't know. Anyways,
weird.
Oh yeah, and then there's the bit about fucking 12-year-old girls.
What?
Yeah, remember when his superior comes to ask him like, you didn't go and kill people. And he's like, where am I going to stay? It's like, well, you could go stay at that place. They got the prostitute. He's like, oh, really? He's like, yeah, they even have like girls as young as 12. And it's like, whew.
Yeah.
It's like, okay, so everyone's horrible.
Well, that's what I mean too. It's, I don't know, like there's been other movies too where it's like everything is horrible, and I'm like, yeah, I really dislike that. But this one, it's not even. I don't even it's not that I like dislike it or like it or anything. I was like, I watched it. I'm like completely ambivalent to it. I don't care. Whatever. Like, I'm never gonna watch this again. I'll never, as you put it, I'll never think of this again.
Yeah.
Almost ever.
I kind of slot it in with like Double Suicide as far as like
Yeah.
my like, I appreciate this movie exists, but there's like not a lot here for me to like sink my teeth into.
Yep. I agree with you. But it's like I said, there are like moments I was like, oh yeah, that's interesting. But it's not enough.
Yeah. Yeah, not enough.
Not enough.
Well, let's read who hates this movie. It's a pretty shallow pool, RJ.
I was gonna say, out of the people who've even watched it.
Exactly. The lowest rating on this bad boy is 2 stars with a review.
Mm-hmm.
And this Taurus Venus, I watched this.
They had the same opinion we did.
Yeah. Bar Brady gave this 2 stars and wrote, enjoyed it, but did not understand it. That's it.
Okay.
This movie doesn't even, it doesn't bring out a lot of emotions toward from people. 2.5 stars from David Bruner. Technically, this is well made, and some of the camera work is really interesting. Mm-hmm. Overall, though, casual nihilism just isn't my thing, especially as I get older. I get that the awfulness of the characters is an indictment of colonialism, but this was just kind of interminable. Isabel's a treat, as always. Her last look is the definition of fashion.
Nice.
Yeah. I think
nice.
that one kind of says it all. And it's not really hate. It's just negative. But very few people have seen this movie, and I don't know how people can really watch it these days other than through illicit means.
I have owned the Criterion copy.
Oh, yeah? Yeah.
That's how I watch all of these films.
You busted out your old DVD, huh?
You narc.
Yeah. I don't know. Any other thoughts here about Coup?
No, not at all, man. Like, I don't know. I feel like we've said enough about this thing, but at the same time, I don't know, man. This movie's all right. It's fine, I guess, but I'm never going to think about it again, and I don't really care either.
Yeah. That's about where I'm at. Anyway.
Good stuff.
Great. Well, it's all part of the process, going through these things. Sometimes you will come across a movie where you're like, maybe you just weren't in the right mood to watch it too. That's kind of like the thing I've thought about watching sometimes the movies, is that like this isn't like a curated list of like movies, like the actual order of it. It's just kind of like, this is the order we put these movies out. It's not like they've planned an immaculate way of like, this is a film history in a box. You're just kind of watching it as they came out. So sometimes you're going to get like a series of movies that like work really well together, and then sometimes it's just like, here's some random movies. Do you like movies? And it's like, well, I don't like all movies equally, right? I just like, sometimes you're just like, this didn't, unless you're like in that space to be like, I really want to watch this type of movie. We don't get to enjoy that luxury. You just kind of get it, and I guess that's it.
That's your fault, man, for making us do this thing.
Fuck. I know, it's my fault. It's always my fault. After the break, how do you want to die this week, RJ?
Well, you could fall in the shitter.
One in the one in the belly and one in the shitter.
Yeah.
Okay. Done.